Um, Thanks for having me. And thanks, Randy, so much for organizing this and all the volunteers. This is pretty cool. I really liked what you said at the beginning about creating space and like finding opportunities in small ways to do it. It gave me a lot to think about. Yeah, so this talk is about a project I worked on after I joined the team I'm on now about 2 years ago. The project was trying to make our DBT builds much faster. It worked, they got much faster, but then a few months later, I ended up rolling the whole thing back. And so this is that story. So when I joined the team I'm on now, I was the second data engineer and I was supporting a bigger team of data scientists. This was very different from every experience I'd had before. I'd been on two prior data teams, but those were much smaller, like less than 5 people. And on a team that size, you typically do everything. So setting up the warehouse, architecting DBT, but also like working with product managers to hash out what a metric should be. Here, there were the data scientists embedded in product teams focusing on the analytics, and myself and one other person were responsible for the platform side of things, configuring the BI tool, everything just to support those embedded data scientists. This felt like a cool new luxury to like be able to focus more on one layer of the stack rather than everyone um, doing full stack work. And the only time you can focus on the platform is in service of whatever analytics need you have at the time. So pretty quickly, I saw a problem that seemed worth fixing. The DBT builds were taking 2 hours. So this, in like our production build that ran a few times a day, this wasn't a huge issue. It's not ideal, but it happens asynchronously. So if it takes 2 hours or 1 hour, no one really notices. But this was a bigger issue in CI. So if you're waiting for a pull request, um, you don't want to have to wait 2 hours for the merge to happen. And then also for local dev, it's a really slow feedback loop if you're building a large portion of the DAG and it takes 2 hours to finish. So around this time, I was watching an old DBT Coalesce talk. The talk was about something else, but there was like sort of an offhand comment by the speaker that you should never use full production data in dev. This felt like so obvious to me in hindsight, but I had never experienced a setup like this, and I hadn't thought of it. Um, the idea is that in production, you need to build data sets for actual consumption. So of course, they need all the data. Um, but in testing, you just need enough to check all the edge cases you care about. And so the idea here is pretty much like when you're at Costco or any supermarket and you go to the sample desks, they have one bite of whatever food is usually enough to tell you if you like it. You don't need to buy a whole box to make that decision. Same with data. Like if our goal is just to test our new transformations and decide if they work, some tables are way too big for that. If we have a table with 100 million rows, maybe 1 million rows is enough to check every edge case. And then the next 99 million are just wasted effort and wasted time waiting for DBT to build. So if we want to take this approach of sampling our data in test and throwing away most of it and just keeping a smaller set that's actually useful for testing, how do we actually do it? I think there's two main approaches that people take. The first, and I think most common one, is to grab recent rows. So if you have a table that has 2 years of data, grab the last week, the last hour, whatever, um, just as a way to drastically limit the amount of data. And then also because you're getting recent data, you know that it's still relevant. It's still situations that are occurring in the production data set. The downside is that you miss the other end. If you have the last week, you don't necessarily have stuff that just occurred historically, but no longer occurs. We have an example of this at work that's we have a user role type that we moved away from, but still exists in the production data set historically, and we still have transformations related to that that we need to test. So if we grab the last week of data, we don't see any of that old user role, and we wouldn't be able to test it. Another approach is just grab random rows. So rather than the recent slice, just sort of throughout time, grab some sampling to still trim down the number of rows you have, but hopefully see every edge case that's ever happened. This still suffers from another issue, which is that joins don't really work. So if we have a customers table and an orders table, if they're sampled independently and we grab one of our sampled orders and try to join over and find the corresponding customer, because the sampling happened separately, odds are you won't find it. If you have 1% of orders and 1% of customers when you join, you only end up with 0.01% of the production joined rows. And that's with two tables. If you had five tables or 10 tables joined together, you quickly end up with totally empty data sets. So instead, we took a different approach. I set up a system that did consistently customer-based sampling. So we would grab a sample of customers, and then for each selected customer, all of that customer's rows across any table. So this enabled us to make sure that all those joins happen cleanly. And this is slightly more complicated than grabbing recent data, but it's still pretty simple. It's really just this one line of SQL. Just to walk through it, it's this, we hash the customer ID, although you don't even really need to do that if you have UUIDs or sequential IDs. This gets a big random number, mod 10 or some other number gets a random number between 0 and 9. And then when we compare it to 0, we've selected just 10% of the customers and all their rows in whatever table this is. So we can apply this to any table that has a customer ID column, which in most environments I've seen is most of them. Um, so it's just this one line SQL. There's a little more to package it up. I put it in a dbt macro, sprinkle it around the staging layer we have so that staging is sampled and then everything downstream of that gets sampled as well. And that macro also incorporated a variable so we could switch sampling on or off depending on environment and also manually switch it on and off for local development if you wanted to use the full data set or wanted to use a sampled data set instead. So the results were great. It took the total full build time from 2 hours down to 20 minutes. Um, and because for CI and local dev, you were usually using dbt's defer feature and not building the full DAG, this could really just be like a few minutes, which is really nice for a fast feedback loop. So good results. Time to ship it. There was a little more infrastructure to set up beyond just the dbt macro, but not much. Like we needed a separate environment in dbt cloud that we could defer to that built everything with sample data in parallel with our production data environment. But it was pretty straightforward. Most of the effort here was documenting it and telling people. So updating our Notion pages that told people how we use dbt, recording a Loom to walk people through this process, but to show them how to use it and why to use it and how it works. And then like a Slack message that had copy pastable snippets for running sampled and unsampled builds. So this felt like a big win. That feeling, of course, did not last. Cracks appeared quickly. There were a few like bugs with this that would happen occasionally. So false negatives were possible. Here you would see um, your PR, you'd put up a change in a PR, the build would pass, you'd merge it, and then as soon as it was in production, you would see the test fail. And one common situation with this was duplicates. So if you had a test that asserted something was unique or some pair of columns was unique, in the full production data set, there might be a duplicate that should fail. But in the sample data set, if you only have 10% or 1% of the full production data set, there might not be any duplicates there. So you might miss it, and then you have the frustrating experience of needing to open another PR to fix it once you've found out. There were also situations that you could have false positives, where you would be sure that the code was right, but you put up a PR and CI fails. And so this was due to quirks in how sampling wouldn't be applied consistently across everything. But it was a really frustrating experience. I got plenty of angry Slack messages saying my code is fine, but I can't seem to get this to pass CI. Beyond these two issues, I think there was a deeper problem, which was just this was a much more complex system with more moving parts. If it's simple, you can understand it. If you can understand it, you can trust it. This was easy for me to understand and debug since I'd set it up. But on this more specialized team than I was used to, where data scientists were embedded in the product teams and not focused on the data platform, not deeply digging into every dbt macro like I was, This was just a distraction that sort of got in the way of their work. They wanted a build system that was easy to understand, and they got one that was faster but less predictable. So I tried to make this work, left it running for a few months. So like some technical changes like tweaking the sample rate to try to balance detecting duplicates in CI without slowing down the build too much. Also tried to just tell people how it worked and how to figure out what edge cases you were hitting. Most of the time it just worked, but even if it's uncommon that you hit some edge case, it's really frustrating when it's due to just the sampling setup. But at the end of the day, realized that this issue was about trust and that it was worth optimizing for that. So rolled it back from CI, left it as an option in local development if you wanted to switch it on. But in CI, we went back to the full 2 hour build with no sampling at all. So this was about 2 years ago, and a lot's changed in the time since. So we are much bigger. We have more people, more rows in all of our tables, but also all those people are making more models too. So we've added more of everything. Um, but we also have more revenue, and we pay for bigger Snowflake instances. So 2 years later, we're about the same place. We have 2 hour full builds again. And we have some techniques to try to limit what you're building in dev and CI. But at the end of the day, I usually tell people just set auto merge on and walk away once you're sure it's right. So I have a few takeaways from this experience. Trust is much more important than speed. I think that's obvious on one level. Um, But I think because speed is so easy to measure, like you don't even have to explicitly measure it. dbt Cloud will tell you when something got much faster and much slower. Speed's so easy to measure, and trust is like really hard, impossible to quantify, and that makes us sort of naturally focus what gets measured gets managed. And I think it's worth intentional effort to sort of focus on what matters over what is measured. Another takeaway is that the tooling has to match the team. The same tool might empower one team and confuse another. The fit to the team matters much more than finding a clever, effective solution. And I think in my situation, this more specialized team required a more frictionless tool, which I did not provide. And yeah, I guess this is like kill your darlings effectively. Like good ideas can be worth abandoning. Um, and it's worth not focusing on is this a good idea and more like index on the implementation of the idea. I think sampling is a great idea that we don't do enough of as an industry. But here it was not a good implementation, or the implementation didn't fit the team that I was building it for. I still don't think it's wasted effort. And here the worst case situation was we were back at square one with 2 hour builds, but having learned something. And they can take those learnings and try it again in a different context or with a different approach here. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Awesome, awesome. There are questions. So some people were commenting that they were complimenting on how your shirt matches your slides.
Not intentional, but yeah, totally. Yeah.
Oh, it's
Huh.
a really nice touch. Uh, okay. Let me scroll to the questions because there probably a couple of things that popped up. If not, guys, put something in there. Um, People were saying, yeah, one thing that really resonated with me was just the trust over speed thing, because that was yeah, when every other question is like you doubting yourself or someone doubting you, it is really painful.
Totally. Yeah, and I guess I made the point of like, oh, I want to be able to step away from ideas. I don't want to get attached to the idea. But on the flip side, I also felt like I might be too sensitive. Like if someone said, "Oh, this is causing a problem for me," I don't want to be too reactive. It's worth trying to fix the problem a little bit.
Mhm. Okay, so let's see, there were a lot of, someone also was starting, like when you said tools matching the team, they were like, oh, that's an existential comment that I wasn't expecting for today, but that totally is. Okay, okay, when you say, there was a question, when you say build for CI jobs, do you mean the entire DAG, or were you selecting only change down plus downstream models, like the modified stuff?
Changed and downstream. So this was we were already using DBT's Slim CI feature, and then this was an enhancement on top of that. Because if you
Mhm.
update the config or do one of our far upstream models, you would still build effectively everything and wait for 2 hours. And that's the situation we're still in today. So this is a additional optimization, which I think made it even more confusing. Like occasionally, just with dbt's deferral, you run into weird issues. And so this was like another layer that intersects with that.
Yeah, more things I can break. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Any other questions, guys? Because otherwise, we do have a break coming up, which just means that we are open to talking about everything. As in, we can just anyone who has a mic, any speaker, is free to just hop on, open, turn your camera if you want to or not, and just discuss. All the talks that we've had. We're like a third through the conference already. We've already had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 talks, right, out of the 14 we have on the schedule, I think it was. So yeah, we're getting on their way here. Um, the chat has been really, really fun. I've been noticing like a lot of people commenting on just all their all their different related experiences, I would say. And then a drinking game, because what conference would not have a drinking game? How did you talk about the time? Oh, so someone asked, like, how did you talk about the time spent on the speed up when it came time for annual review time?
That's a great question. I don't. So I think because this was shortly after I joined, you like often miss the first review because you
Mhm.
haven't been there long enough. So I don't think I had to talk about it. I think I already reverted it before doing it. I'm not sure whether that's a good or a bad thing though.
Usually with these, you can get the first one, which is, I made things faster, and then and then you roll it back and you be like, oh, I increased trust or something. You just not talk about that.
Yeah. Each side is a win. I like that.
Oh, performance review season. That's always a whole thing. Um, okay, guys, but otherwise, if you don't